Good morning, good afternoon, and of course, good evening, wherever you fine folk may be in the world and whatever time it may be. Welcome to the top 50 pinball machines, Gonzo's top 50, my top 50, by the way, just so as we're clear on that. As you'll have no doubt seen from the title, Stern Star Wars, the Pro version. That's all I can do. Look, thank you for all the interactions. There's loads of interactions over the last week or two. A lot of people are asking what my thoughts on the awards. I almost came down here today and did a video. Today's video was almost going to be about the awards. I have to be honest, I just couldn't do it. I came down, I didn't want to speak about it. I'd much rather speak about that. I'd much rather speak about the pinball machine itself, it has to be said. Pinball machines is better than pinball politics, right? So that's just what we're going to be discussing here today. Now, I must make myself very clear here. I am sorry if you're a regular viewer of this channel and you think, don't explain the rules again. We get it. We understand the rules of the top 50. Not everybody does. After a couple of days ago, I uploaded the Cactus Canyon video. Somebody said, I'd like to see where class of 1812 sits. I had somebody else a couple of weeks ago saying, I can't believe that you don't even have Adam's Family on there. So whilst a lot of you do understand the rules, some people are coming to the videos a little bit later and whatnot. It's best for everybody to go and watch episode 1. The simplest way of explaining it is, in order for a game to appear on that list at the top, 2 things have to happen. Number 1, I have to have had it in this house. And number 2, I have to have done a video on it. So the ones that are at the top, they're in the black ink. We've already done videos on. The ones at the bottom in the red ink are games that I've had in this house, but I haven't done a video on them yet. So the idea is they go from that list and they go up there and we decide where they're going to sit. Hence the reason today, Stern Star Wars. Now, it's slightly different to the Pinside Top 100. I'm going to be ranking things on, are they fun, are they addictive, what's the humour like, do they have charm and personality, toys and mechanisms, how approachable is the game, shots and positions, what are the rules like, does it have achievable goals, is it rewarding, is it frustrating, and ultimately, when it left, did I regret it leaving? It's very, very different to the Pinside Top 100, which has got to factor in everybody's choices. I don't have to. I've just got to please myself. And what is important to me in a pinball machine is possibly not important to everybody else. I don't like deep rules. If you've got deep rules, and I don't get them and I can't do it, it's probably going to be way down that list for me. So this is very much my list. I did have someone contact me at the moment. Attack from Mars is at the top. I did have someone contact me and they said, oh, Attack from Mars isn't top. And I said, it is. It absolutely is. They said, no, Attack from Mars isn't top. I said, no, it is for me. So there you go. It's very much my list. Attack from Mars is top. Big Lebowski's in second. Cactus Canyon third. Fishtails is in fourth. Elvira's House of Horrors is in fifth. But there are a lot of big hitters that have got to go back up there. I have not discussed Lord of the Rings yet. Deadpool has not been talked about. Godzilla, we've not done. Batman 66, there are Theatre of Magic, Monster Bash. There's a lot of games which I've had in this house that I have not even done videos on yet. So that top is going to change. Let's talk Star Wars. Star Wars had a lot of hate. Now, the first time I ever played Star Wars was, let me rewind back a little bit. I didn't know they still made pinball machines. So I'd been playing pinball at my friend Spencer's house, who you see on this channel quite frequently. For some years, we were playing an old game. We were playing Theatre of Magic, basically. I wasn't even aware that they still made pinball machines. I didn't know. It was probably at the point of about 2017. I did a little Google search to see if they were still making them. At that point, I came across a company called Stern. Never heard of them before, actually, because my journey into pinball had stopped for about 20 or 30 years. So I started to discover that they were making these games. And the first time I ever played a Stern Spike 2 was on the pier at Bournemouth, which is, if you're viewing in Australia or in the States, Bournemouth is a seaside town. It's a coastal town on the south coast of England. And there was a pier there, and at the start of the pier, there was an arcade. And I went into the arcade, and they actually had 3 games in there. They had Creature from the Black Lagoon, and the right flipper wasn't working on it, so you couldn't. Well, you could. Funny enough, it would take your money, but you couldn't get a proper game on it. It had Star Wars, and it had Deadpool. And so I played Star Wars, and I was never used to this. There's posts that pop up in Star Wars and stop the ball. I wasn't used to that. I'd never seen it before. Oh, I did not like it. The irony is, the game that I gravitated most towards there was actually Deadpool, which was, I didn't really know what I was doing. I was just hitting the flippers, and I couldn't take anything. It was all a bit of a sensory overload, actually. So that was my first taste of it. Little did I know it's going to go on to Deadpool was going to become, sort of, for the most part, my favourite game. And no, I'm not giving any secrets away. That doesn't necessarily mean Deadpool finished top because of the criteria. So my initial thoughts on Star Wars, I didn't think it was great. However, once I started to get a little bit more into pinball and I started to interact with people on the forums and whatnot, I saw that Star Wars had an awful lot of hate. What I seemed to gather from Star Wars was that it hadn't really captured the essence of Star Wars. It hadn't captured the essence of the Force. Now, I'm going to speak now in a language which you're only really going to understand if you're a Star Wars fan. I'm not talking about pinball. I'm going to mention a lot of stuff which is not going to make a lot of sense if you haven't watched the Star Wars films. And when I say the Star Wars films, I mean A New Hope, I mean Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi. That's what I'm talking about. The other stuff, I can actually, to be fair, I thought Rogue One was quite good. Aside from that, that's Star Wars for me. So the accusation was it didn't feel like Star Wars. So I'd only ever heard really, really bad things about this game. Its expectation levels. People kept on saying Stern Star Wars is awful, it's awful, it's awful. At the same time, its expectation levels, people say Medieval Madness, it's the best game in the world, the best game that's ever been made. It's really hard when and I like Medieval Madness, it's good, don't get me wrong, but I don't believe it to be the best game ever made. But if people keep telling you that, you can only ever be disappointed. And I think I'd been told so many times that Star Wars was awful, I was actually pleasantly surprised. Because the one accusation I heard about it was it didn't feel like Star Wars. I've got to say, when I pressed the start button, the theme tune started up. The one I had an R2-D2 topper. R2-D2 was turning around. As I remember, on the plunger lane, there was a lightsaber. I think this was an add-on. I think it was a mod. You could choose to be Luke or Leia or, R2-D2. You could. It did feel like Star Wars. So I think that's the first thing that I should say about it. Now, so I went in with very low expectations. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk about the game with my list in mind. So, do I think that Star Wars is fun? I think it can be. I think Star Wars can be fun, certainly. I wouldn't call it a massively fun game. I think, yeah. Is it addictive? No. No, Star Wars is not addictive. You'll excuse me if I'm flying through this, but for somebody who says just short answers, no, Star Wars isn't addictive. In fact, when we get to the bit where is it rewarding and frustrating, Star Wars is actually annoying. It's a very annoying game. So for that reason, it's hard for it to be addictive. It was a phrase I used on The Walking Dead. It didn't have that one more game factor. It had that one less game factor, and it sort of annoyed me a bit. Is it humorous? Which is one of my criteria. Is the game humorous? No, there's nothing funny about it. But that's okay. That's Star Wars. Star Wars. Not every game has to be humorous. It's fine. But it had plenty of Star Wars content in it, so it wasn't lacking that. It was just, yes, but charm and personality. Not really. It didn't really have a ton of charm and personality, it had to be said. I don't know if it's really difficult to capture the essence of Star Wars. I'm not so sure. I don't know the Data East game particularly well. I played one, Electric Circus, which is sadly no longer there. I did like that place. I think it was Star Wars Trilogy. It may have been Sega. I may have that wrong. I quite enjoyed that. Toys and Mechanisms. Now, I'm only playing the Pro version. It was underwhelming, really disappointing. There was a TIE Fighter there, but it didn't really do anything. There's a TIE Fighter mode. I guess it's quite interesting for that part on it, but I guess it is interactive in as much as you're not really hitting the TIE Fighter, you're hitting the target underneath it, as I remember it. They missed a massive trick. The Death Star didn't do anything. There was nothing that actually did anything on there of any note. It was a real letdown, actually, in terms of the toys and mechanisms. I can't really think of a genre that would give you more to work with. Be it an X-Wing fighter, be it a Millennium Falcon, be it a Death Star, be it any number of the characters, R2-D2, whoever. There's so much for you to work with. So to decide to work with none of it is bad. I like the R2-D2 on the topper. Again, we often talk about do they make the best pinball machine that they could? That R2-D2 that was on the topper should have been under the playfield. I know that Data East won an R2-D2, but that's my point. They saved the best mechanism for the topper. And that's not good enough. And I just know that had Dutch or CGC or with Raw Frills in that one, or let's say Spooky American Pinball, almost any number of them, there would have been a Star Wars-based mechanism on that playfield. There just would have done. There would have been something interactive, which would have made it fun. They're linked. They're inextricably linked. Is it fun and toys and mechanisms? If you're not going to have any of that in there, then it is just a waste of space, I have to say. And not just a waste of space, a waste of a license. Now, don't get me wrong, as I understand it, Stern Star Wars does very, very well on location. And I get it, but location's a different thing. It's just about encouraging people to put some coins in, right? That's a different thing. I do wonder if anybody going and putting coins in would wonder what the hell was going on. It'd be hard to learn the rules. You'd probably find yourself having a really, really good game and not understanding why because of the multipliers. Anyway, is the game approachable? Yes, I guess it is very approachable. It's Star Wars. I think anything Star Wars is approachable, be it a pinball machine or a lunchbox. Or anything with Star Wars in it is going to yield a loyal audience, certainly, that's for sure. Let's get down to shots and positions. I think this is twofold on here. Star Wars has some good shots on it. It's a fan layout. It's very much a Steve Ritchie layout with the right ramp feeding the right flipper, the left ramp feeding the left flipper. There's a really nice inner loop on it. In fact, the inner loop on Star Wars is as good as anything. As it really is. I think it's a tremendous shot, a very rewarding shot, actually. So it's got some good shots. And I think it's probably worth saying on here that Star Wars was a lot better than I thought it was going to be, but you must remember I was told this is the worst pinball machine that's ever been made, along those lines. My expectations were so low. So it was much better than I thought. However, it's really difficult to discuss Stern Star Wars without discussing the plunge shot. Because it just must be. And I feel sort of bad doing it because I love Steve Ritchie. Got a lot of respect for him. Star Trek Next Generation, I think, is up there with the best games. By the way, I've had that here as well. That's got to go up on the list. I'm really pleased that he's joined Jersey Jack. I've not played Elton John yet. I'm looking forward to playing it. I like so many of Steve Ritchie's games. I really, really do. However, there's a massive geometry issue with this game. Star Wars is the only game where I've ever played, and this has happened on numerous occasions, where I've ever had games where I've not been able to hit the ball once. So the plunge shot, what happens is there's a bank of 3 targets. They're the multiplier targets. So you plunge the ball, and it hits the targets, and then it goes to the left-hand side of the playfield, and there's a bunch of targets. I think it's, say, the force. Then from there, it bounces off them, and it can go straight down to the right out lane. Now, obviously, there's a saver timer on it. So if that happens, and you do manage to plunge it without hitting the ball, and it goes straight out, it will then auto-plunge. The biggest problem is the auto-plunge often does exactly the same thing. Now, I spent a long time putting the coil power up and down, trying to change all manner of things. It didn't fix the problem. It didn't do it every time, but it did it enough. And I think the most infuriating time wasn't when I got to play no balls at all. It would be when I'd done a really good first ball on a game. I'd had a really good first ball and done it really well. And you lose the ball, and then you have your second ball, and it plunges it straight down to the out lane. And then the autosave will come on, and then that will kick it straight down the out lane. And I was so certain of it when I had it, I actually said to Spencer, when he came round to play it, I said, please be aware that you may well have a game on this where you do not get to hit the ball. And it happened, not to him, it happened to me whilst he was here. I probably had the game here for a couple of months at least. Me having games where I didn't hit the ball at all was not very rare. It must have happened 5 or 6 times, but that's enough. But that's with it happening on every. So basically, that's the plunge and the save, then the plunge and the save, then the plunge and the save. That's 6 times. Not really good enough, really, but it would happen frequently. I have not got a clue how that got out of quality control. How when this playfield layout was presented to whoever signs this stuff off, that they said that's acceptable. Surely whoever was in charge at Stern at the time should have said, well, that's not good enough, that doesn't work, you need to work out the geometry, that the targets need to move, or we need to put a little guide on the plunger lane or something like that. Something needed to have been done, it wasn't done. And I have heard of people who have games where that doesn't happen. So my friend Andy actually had one, and he said he never had that problem. But I also know of a lot of games where it did. A lot of people had that game, and it did. And actually, I like to think, I would hope we've got the best Star Wars tutorial on this channel, which Craig did, and he did a wonderful, wonderful job. But almost the first thing he says, and this is, this is a guy who's one of the very best players in the UK, and Craig said at the start of his tutorial, okay, what we've got to do is, first of all, we've got that ball under control from the plunge. It's one of the first things he says. First thing you've got to do is try and get that ball under control. Honestly, it's like a caged animal. It's like a wild animal at the start. And I think a lot of time people will make an excuse for a machine. Some people say with The Walking Dead can be quite brutal. But people say The Walking Dead it makes you a better player because it's so hard. But it doesn't, it is hard, but it doesn't ever get to the point where you don't ever get to play the game after you've plunged it. That's something very, very different. And I think for that reason, it's awful. I'm really, really surprised that this design was allowed to go through. And as I say, I don't mean that to be mean to Steve Ritchie, but if I didn't mention it, it would be dishonest of me not to. And I understand there's some variances in games. Since I've done the Rush one, I said when I did, and I filmed it. I filmed the orbit going straight down the middle on Rush. And yes, I balanced the machines. I've got a digital leveler. I've got normal spirit levels. I do everything. I really do. And some people have said they've got Rush and that doesn't happen. Well, that'd be great. That's the only thing that's wrong with Rush. If I could get a machine where that didn't happen, I'd be very interested to play it again. And I've no doubt, actually, Rush would go up on that board if I did, because I did enjoy the game. This wasn't the case with Star Wars. I was very, very unhappy with it, actually. The rules are extremely complicated. The multipliers, I get it. You can go up to 40 plus multipliers, but I only got it because I basically had an expert pinball player at my house explaining it to me. The only reason I was able to fully understand what was going on. And it's not just me saying it. If you look at the video on this channel where Craig is doing a tutorial, there are a number of comments on there where people are saying, thank you for explaining this to me. I now understand it. It's hard to understand. Does it have achievable goals? Well, I guess it does. There's easy to get multi-balls on it. The TIE Fighter use of the action button is good. I should probably say that. Use of the action button on this game is good. Particularly with the TIE Fighter one. I like that. You've got to hit the action button and kill the TIE Fighters. I think it's cool. I also think the video mode is pretty cool. Unfortunately, that brings back to rules. Because apparently, well, it's not apparently, I know you can. If you've got your multipliers set up before you go into the video mode, then you can earn an awful lot on that. And I think people that play in competition complain about this game in competition, because if you have a good video mode, you can basically win. You can win out in that section. You can easily win against the person you're playing against. So, yeah. So look, not so great. I don't overly care. That didn't bother me. I quite liked the video mode, and I don't. If you watch this channel regularly, You'll know I'm not a massive fan of video modes in modern pinball machines. I just don't think we need them particularly. I don't mind them if they're interactive with the shots you're making, but when the ball stops completely and you just got to hit a button and you're doing video mode, I'm not too interested. This one I didn't mind. I thought this one was pretty good. It was as close to a game as I thought you could get. In fact, I was almost going to say it's one of the better things about the game. Was it rewarding? Was it frustrating? Both. If you got those multipliers and things were going your way and you were hitting the shots, because I liked the modes, I should probably say that. The modes I really enjoyed. You're probably thinking I hated everything about this pinball machine. I didn't. So yes, it was rewarding, but it would be incredibly frustrating. It was a very tough, very brutal pinball machine, and I do think it was a design flaw, that plunge. I really do. It was a design flaw that got through quality control. And if what we're saying is, because these things cost thousands of pounds, if what we're saying is that some of them came through the factory and they didn't have that fault, but some did, I know one thing: if it was a car, it would have got a recall on it. As simple as that. But it's not a car, it's a pinball machine, so you're sort of stuck with it. Do I regret it leaving? No, not at all. Not at all. It actually did me a massive favour having it, because it made me realise I don't want it. So for that reason, it's brilliant. I do think one of the brilliant benefits I have of having pinball machines at this house, if I have something, it makes me really want it. If it's really good, I really, really want it, and I sort of have to have one. Cactus Canyon would be a great example. You've got to look back no further than my previous video on here. Cactus Canyon was so good. I thought, oh wow, I've got to have one of these. I've got to have one of these. Remember me saying that in the video. But sometimes it saves you some money, doesn't it? You know, so there's some where you think, actually, it's fine. I do not need one of these. And Star Wars was one of them. I've no doubt it will continue to be a good pinball machine on location. And I don't mean to poo-poo it if you like Star Wars. I think the theme was integrated really well. I don't have a problem with the theme. I think the theme's integrated well. If you're one of those lucky people who doesn't have one where the ball plunge isn't an issue, then you're probably going to enjoy the game a lot more than I did. And I think if I had one if I was to have it retrospectively corrected, I guess maybe you can buy a different ball laying guide or something like that. But the whole point is the thing is you can't change it too much, because the skill shot is supposed to plunge, hit the 3 targets, then hit the force target. So that's one of the skill shots. If you put in a guide on the shooter lane, then you're going to stop that skill shot. So clearly you're meant to hit it. Unfortunately, with geometry, they hadn't really figured out that by you hitting that, then it's going to drain down the right out lane. So I think if I had a big collection and those things were fixed, I think I'd enjoy playing it, and I think I'd still play it, because when you get that big game, it's very rewarding. And I did have a really good game. I can't remember exactly what I got on it. I've actually got it on the channel, so we'd have to go and look. But I think I scored something like 7 billion on it once, something like that. It was amazing. I had the game of my life. And was that rewarding? Yes, it was. But that was possibly the one time in 2 months that it was. And I'm just not into pinball for that. I'm not into pinball for it to kick my arse every 19 games. I had someone said this to me about Walking Dead, actually. They said, you know what, it kicks my arse. If I play 20 games, it kicks my arse for 19 of them. But on that 20th game, it's so good, and I get to hoard, and it's so rewarding. I couldn't do that. I couldn't handle the 19 terrible games. I really couldn't. I mean, ultimately, for me, pinball was meant to be fun. And this game isn't fun. And the bits of it that are good are because of the shots that Steve Ritchie got right, and because I love Star Wars. I do wonder if it wasn't Star Wars themed, or I'd be interested in playing it at all. But it's not going to be lowest down on the list. So let's go and have a look. So Stern Star Wars, where is it going to go? Well, I'm not going to string you along and start working my way from the top down. We'll work our way down from the bottom up, quite frankly, as it's not going to rank particularly highly. I don't think it's a triumph of a pinball machine. I really don't. It goes above Jackbot, should I say? Most will. Would I have Star Wars ahead of X-Men? yes, I probably would. I probably would. Has to be said. Star Wars instead of Popeye. It's a weird one actually, because I think if I had, it'd be tough. I just think Star Wars to be your only game would be tough. It'd frustrate the hell out of me. I think I would end up not playing pinball, whereas I think Popeye would. But I think if I had a number of games, I'd probably still choose Star Wars over Popeye. And now we get to the point here. Now it's going to start getting interesting, I think. Stern Star Wars or Jurassic Park Home Edition. This is the Home Edition. I have had Jurassic Park Pro, so that's still got to go up on the list. That's a big hitter. What I get to when I get to this point is take money out of it. Because if you'd think, well, hold on, you'd take Stern above Jurassic Park Home Edition, right? Because it's worth £3,000 more. No, I'm not going to do that. Which would I prefer to loan? This is what this is all about. If I were to loan a pinball machine for a year, I know I've just contradicted myself that with Popeye, but I think that's still the case. It goes above Popeye just. I think if I was to have a pinball machine for a year, I would rather have Jurassic Park Home Edition. And I don't know why I feel bad. I think it's because John. I think John Jags has got Star Wars. I know he loves it so much. That's the reason. I feel a bit bad for him, actually, because I know he loves it so much. So sorry, John, that it's gone down there, mate. I am. But I cannot make a case for Stern Star Wars being better than Jurassic Park Home Edition, Ghostbusters, Judge Dredd, Avengers Infinity Quest, Rush. It's just not better than any of those for me. But as I say, it's my list. You may well disagree. You'd probably have it higher. I can't imagine anybody would have it at the top of that list. It's just not a very good game. Anyway, there you go. Hopefully you've enjoyed this video. A bit of a moany video, isn't it? The irony is I thought I wouldn't do a video about the Pinball Awards because it'd be a bit miserable and a bit too serious. I'll end up doing quite a miserable video about Star Wars. But look, you know what? It gets it on the list, right? It's one less to do, and I've got a whole. I think you may be able to see it. I think actually just in shot you can see Congo. You can probably see Walking Dead there. Maybe Star Trek Pro. And maybe Theatre Magic. I don't think I'm giving any secrets away if you can see those there. Hopefully you can't see the 15 or so that are underneath there. But there you go. I think it's taken shape. I think the list is taking shape. Thank you so much to everybody that said such nice things about this series. I really do appreciate it. I read every single comment. I really do. And I absolutely love the interaction on the channel. So thanks very much. We'll be back next week with lots more stuff.